GERO 200. All right, so here we are, week 9. Amazing. The semester's flying. And just again, a heads up, your midterm, you get access by clicking here. All right, you have all week. And once you get into it, you have 2 hours, okay? Unless you have OSAS accommodations, and then that's worked out with your co-instructor, Julia Walsh, all right? My wife right there. And so please contact her if you have any issues, okay? She did send out a study guide right here, okay, where she systematically reviewed the key points for each week. You see it right there. It was put out there as an email to you, so you would have received that email, okay? And she reminded you about frequently asked questions, and again, the OSAS information right there. And yeah, you guys are going to do fine, so no worries about that. So we're going into week 9, and this is probably the arguably the most interesting part of the course for a lot of you guys. A lot of you guys are business majors, okay? So now we are going into the wheelhouse of Marshall majors, okay? The Leventhal School of Accounting, anybody that is into economics, okay? And ultimately, we are all business majors, okay? Because at some point in your life, and even a lot of you doing it right now, you have to manage your life, okay? And a big part of managing your life is managing your finances, okay? So we're looking at what's going on right now and projecting ahead by looking at the implication of having, as we know from you guys have learned from this class, many, many older Americans. And we're going to also kind of look at it with respect to more global implications. And we've already talked about this earlier about the burden, the financial burden in terms of the financial well-being of countries all around the world. The metric is what percentage of the gross domestic product is going in the negative direction, okay? So it's removing the wealth of the country because of the economic burden having older people around. And that is in the form of pension systems, okay? And guaranteed income. And that's something that we have in a very small amount, and the rest of it, as we're going to learn through the remainder of the course, is up to us in terms of setting up our retirement accounts. And we're going to talk about that in length. All right. Now, I'm going to go through the issues right here. I do want to, I'm just going to kind of zip through here. Don't forget just to open your quiz, okay, in a different window, okay? And then what I want you to do is kind of grasp what I have to say, and then you're going to be able to reflect upon what I say and what you do in the reading part of the assignment, which is pretty easy this time around. And then we have a couple of videos, okay? Certainly the most compelling video right here is the one that has just been produced, okay? So this is very current, okay? And but nonetheless, we reinvent the wheel here. The history keeps repeating itself, okay? So right here is taps a little bit into the biology, okay? And it has major health consequences if you have financial insecurity, okay? And so what we see is, as shown throughout all these videos, is as you get older, your likelihood of being able to maintain your employment goes down, okay? You have some guaranteed aspects. Certain blue-collar jobs have a little bit more guarantee because you don't need the physical strength that some of the, did I say blue-collar, white-collar jobs, that the blue-collar jobs have. However, that being said, white-collar jobs are being replaced out because of the need to be really, really savvy in terms of technology. And then the other thing that happens is the expectation by employers is to do more with less, and that means we want you to work longer and longer hours, which becomes more and more difficult as you get older, as you have family demands and things like that. Okay, so this goes over the kind of a unique biological study that looks at aging of cells related to joblessness. They just talk about telomeres. It's just a real quick video. It doesn't go deep into the biology, but that causes an unraveling of the DNA that exposes it to damage, and then it contributes to physiological problems like diabetes and cancer and stuff like that. This particular video was done immediately after the 2008 recession, and it was serious what was going on. People lost their jobs. People who had, the small percentage of us that had money in their defined contribution accounts, which means you had it in the stock market. It was a terrible time to retire, as is right now. Okay, you have to look at the long haul. It will recover, okay? But if you're drawing from your individual retirement accounts right now, then you're really drawing from a reduced basis, which is a bummer, because you put money into it your whole life. It's now worth less, and you're drawing it out, and things cost more. So you can see this is kind of um, an economic snowball. All righty. So then, like I said, then we get in here and they talk about, the current situation, what's going on, and they reflect about a lot of new trends of homelessness. Okay, the fact that as we get older, we need home health assistance, home health aides, home health care, and sadly, that is routinely one of the lowest paid jobs. So it's really hard to find people to do that. And again, they reflect on being technologically driven out of the workplace. All right, so that's kind of what that's all about. So now we're going to look here real quickly at, click on this baby right here, and we're going to look at kind of a more global perspective. And all righty, so, and a lot of this is review for you guys. All right, so again, this article was written shortly after the meltdown that happened in 2008. So this is a 2014 article. And so a lot of what's going on, being discussed in this, can be applied to our current situation for sure. Okay, so they review, which countries are being impacted most significantly right now, but what the future holds for countries that are emerging economies. Okay, developing nation, developing economies, like we did in the first CT1. Okay, alrighty. So we look at the world dynamics. So they go through it right here, and they talk about the different structures, how Europe hit it early. So that was why when you guys selected some countries, you selected some really older European countries, and then a lot of you guys used the unique economies and the unique demographic, meaning the age structure that was seen in countries in Africa that were much younger. And then being able to compel on that and project to the future. All right, so this is the world, and this is the age structure. Okay, we're looking at millions of people. So this is 300 million people right here. So we see the axis down here. So this population in millions, and this is just a way that people that do age analysis like to look at things. Okay, so we see 2010 that it was shaped kind of like a pyramid. That's what they call it right here. And we see that there, on average, the distribution. Okay, there were fewer old people here. This is the dependents. Remember, you guys did that in the second graph that you looked at the working age population. And then these are the people that are the old age dependents, and these are the people that were the young age dependents. Okay, so this is a good economic profile. Okay, so then what we're seeing here is as these people got older, and we're going to go up here in time scale right here. We know that it was harder and harder and harder to succeed financially. So what a lot of people did is they delayed fertility. It became a change in culture, and we can see the consequence right here. So we see it in 2050. Sorry, I'm trying to hold back a sneeze right now. That's what I'm doing. In 2050, we see that instead of being like a pyramid like here, we see it's getting very top heavy with the older population. Okay, that means the working age population right in here is going to have more and more older people that are going to be dependent on them. Okay, and these people are moving up through the system. So you can see this is just going to get worse and worse and worse. Okay, and so this is the big concern. All right, so we know what the drivers are. Okay, so and it's just cultural. I mean, back when I went to college, I was first generation, as was Julie, we're the first generation of our families to go to college, and it was such a unique trajectory to go to college. And I was the only one in all my friends that went to college. I grew up in the east side of LA in Monterey Park, right there on Flow Drive, right where it's pretty close by East LA College. And yeah, so it propelled me into having more career opportunities. Okay, I moved out when I was 18, and I never looked back. Okay, now we fast forward to 2022, and it's a whole different culture. Okay, everybody goes to college. Okay, it's become more like prep school, and so now everybody's going to grad school. Okay, and all that means is that it's more and more competitive. Okay, it also means that you're delaying a lot of the different aspects of the life course. Okay, so people are having children much later in life because they got to get their act together, and then by the time they get around to thinking about having kids, you're lucky if you have one. Replacement at two is becoming more and more rare. Okay, so that's the consequence. So we have falling fertility. Okay, as we know, all right, and that's the driver of why things are starting to look this way. So we're not replacing ourselves down here in the younger age group. So we don't have the pyramid. Okay, and then, of course, the other thing that happens is falling mortality. People are living a lot longer, and we've already talked about all this. Okay, other than this little blip of SARS-CoV-2 and COVID, where it targeted older people, for the most part, we keep extending the lifespan, and then we get the consequences like having a lot more people who suffer from many of the diseases of older age, like dementia. Okay. Alrighty, so what are the implications? All right, so there's big ones. Okay, social interactions. Okay, so the consequence that if people live longer, we're going to need more people to care for them, hands-on, your family. Okay, and then we have the bigger social broad spectrum. Okay, how are we going to finance this? Okay, we're going to probably have to raise taxes on you guys to finance my generation's Social Security and Medicare. It is what it is. Okay. If not, if we don't do that, then we just cut back the benefits that people receive when they get older, which people are not going to be happy about either, because such a high percentage, that's all they get. Okay, so these are big social implications. Okay, health and welfare services. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Okay. Housing, the cost of housing, transportation, all this is, these are all big social implications. Okay. And when we look over here, again, it's looking at the economics of it. Okay, labor markets and things like that. You guys, if you don't have children, okay, then you don't have younger people to do the work that needs to get done. All right, this could be at the highest level of white collar. Sorry, again, you don't have the coders, you don't have the economic planners, okay, because you guys didn't have kids. And then also at the level of blue collar, who's going to do your plumbing if all the older plumbers have retired out? Okay, so these are all big kind of economic concerns. Okay, we have to think about. Okay, and then long-term care. Okay, so we don't have this growing population. So how are we going to finance that? Are we going to be a compassionate society and things like that? Okay. All right. So this creates a lot of conflict between generations. Okay, we're going to suck the system dry, and you guys are going to be putting money into it, and you're going to have the expectation when you are in your 60s that it's your turn. But by 2034, 37, that's when the cracks break open in terms of Social Security. That's when the fund no longer is paying for itself. Okay, and so one thing that's going to either happen is Social Security benefits are going to decline, or we have to raise taxes. Okay, so this talks again about the labor markets that I was talking about, and so when we see right here a decline in the proportion of younger people in population, that leads to a reduction in economic activity. Okay, we just don't have the workers to get the job done. That's why immigration becomes important. Okay, whereas down here, I've talked about how there's a higher and higher percentage of older people. We're viewed as an economic burden, okay, and rightly so, okay. So I'm not contributing to the gross domestic product. I'm pulling the money out, okay. I'm pulling money out of my Fidelity account, and so the banks that love to use that money have less funds because I'm using it to pay for food and stuff like that. And then the other thing is I'm a drain in terms of the cost of healthcare because I'm going to be tapping into it more and more and more. Okay, on a chronic level, we heard about diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, cancer. These are really costly. The new cancer drugs, the average cost is about $10,000 a month. Okay, that's $120,000 a year just for these new drugs. Okay, somebody's got to pay for it. All right, and usually it's paid through government supported insurance programs like Medicare. Okay, so these are big deals. Big deals. Okay, like I said, a solution is increase immigration. Okay. Another solution is we got to increase productivity, and we got to increase education of the older population to retool them. Um, and yeah, so we just there's got to be different ways to address this deficit. This is again looking worldwide, and you see this transition happening here. Right here was 2015. Here we are right now, where we see most of the dependents are older and not younger, low fertility, and we see a reduce in the death rate, a reduce in the mortality. All right, so can we create initiatives to increase childbearing? Okay, but do we want more people, world population? That's a tough one. That's a tough one. This is, again, this is part 2 of your critical thinking assignment 1, that paper you guys wrote, okay, about this changing impact of the dependency ratio. The one thing is we're going to have to work longer. That's crucial. That's key. And that is the prediction you see that happens with the videos in the discussion section for this week. Okay. All right. So the big challenges. Okay. We got to postpone frailty and disability so that I'm not draining the government's finances and my own finances as well. Because when we use Medicare, it's supported and the cost is certainly supplemented by the government, but there are a lot of personal out-of-pocket expenses that we're going to learn about as well, and that can push me over the limit. So now that I actually need something more than Social Security. Okay, so I need more services. So it's the best thing we can do is make it so that I'm not frail. Okay, I don't have disability, and that's you see all the wellness campaigns that are out there. Okay, that's a big part of this. If we can have older Americans be better off, then we're not going to be tapping into paying for all the healthcare services. Okay. The other thing that's happening is healthcare costs continue to rise and rise and rise. Okay, this is very political. All right, so we, as a nation, need to do better in terms of negotiating with the biotech companies, the pharmaceutical companies, the engineering companies in terms of instrumentation, so that they don't charge us so much. So we as a country get disproportionately charged more because that's how it's negotiated. Okay, and this has a lot to do with politics. If your campaign, your livelihood as a congressman or a senator has been funded, for 20, 30 years by a giant pharmaceutical company, then you're not going to vote to reduce the return on their investments. So we're not going to vote to lower drug costs. So it's very, very complicated, but it's something we have to think about. All right, guys? All right. So read through this. We got to address this social challenge for sure. Okay. One of the big things that's happening, and I've talked about this before, is there's going to be a lot of overlap in our families. Okay, we're going to have multi-generational households, whether you like it or not. People living to help each other financially. Like I said, you guys are delayed, and so funding your college and funding your transition into being an independent adult means that we're going to have more overlap. And then what goes full circle means that then as you get older, like myself, and say your grandparents, and now you need some support rather than relying on institutional support. My friend, I was just talking to him. The cost for the elder care facility, because his parents had memory issue, was about between $12,000 and $15,000 a month. And this is not covered by insurance, it's all assets, okay? So there's going to be more, as we discussed last week, caregiving that is going to be on your shoulders, and you're going to have to manage that somehow. That's a big deal, okay? If we can delay the life transition to retirement, that is huge, okay? Which gets us to the second part of this, which is just kind of a fun article that was in NPR about this life transitions, okay? And it shows you this full spectrum in this article. It looks at a couple people that are doing great, okay, and staying involved, and it looks at a couple people that are kind of when you look back on their employment, they were kind of that gig economy back in the 80s and 90s, in the early 2000s, and so they're not set up to retire, but they have no choice. Their jobs are gone, and they are very economically dependent. Okay, so that's a big worry about you guys. Okay, in terms of the pension system that government workers will be around forever, but that's it. It's disappeared in the private sector. So it's up to you to save money, and we're going to be hammering on that. Your next critical thinking assignment, in fact, is all about that. Okay, and we're gonna help you get the ball rolling in terms of doing financial planning for yourself. And then for those of you guys that are financial planners, you will be sitting there as a coach to guide people into this really important next stage of life. Okay, awesome. So we look at this guy, Bob Orozco here. And so he's 89 years old, okay? And he retired, but he's back working he's doing it just for fulfillment, okay? And I've talked to my friends, I'm retirement age, I'm 66, and my friends that have retired, they're bored, okay? And that boredom leads to a decline in health and also a questioning of your value. So why not stay engaged and why not keep working? And that's what Bob did, okay? Luckily, he had a really good job, and he's not totally reliant on generating new income. Okay, we see right here they look at the stats. Okay, we see about 1 in 4 people over the age of 65 is now in the workforce, and that's going to increase. Okay, for the one part that I was talking about, but also the other edge of the sword, the double-edged sword here, where you just want to be happy and engaged. The other one is that you can't eat if you don't have money, okay? And sadly, there's a big segment of our society that is in that cohort, okay? All righty, so, and so why is that happening, okay? So most of our retirement funds are now either 401k, and that's if you have a large company that has a 401k plan, or it's up to you through your own individual retirement accounts that you will set up. Brokerage accounts that you could be setting up right now, things like that, okay? So we're going to learn all about that, okay? But, okay, there's no guarantee. So during the last recession, they lost a third of their value, a chunk. About, people during the current slowdown in the economy, many people have lost 20%, 25% of their assets that were in their retirement accounts, okay? And that's where you have to learn, and we're going to teach you guys about this, that you have to have an age-dependent risk assessment when you're setting up your portfolio, okay? You kind of earmark them for when you project that you're going to be accessing them, okay? And then and then when you do that, you go for less risky investments as you get older and older. So we're going to learn all about that later, anyways. So we see here that 50% of older Americans are dipping into the retirement savings also, okay, to pay for their children, okay, because of their delayed development that I was talking about earlier. You've got to pay for college, you got to help them launch, you got to help your children buy a house. And you can see that this is not a good approach, and it can end up in real problems. It says right here that the median savings is a little over $150,000 for baby boomers, okay? Um, but that is not a true reflection of going on, okay? Because that's a combination of liquid assets, okay, and housing, okay? So I was kind of looking up this, and so I just did just a quick look here. We can look at median savings, okay, and we can ask what's going on here in terms of the value that people had. This was a pretty cool website, and I was checking this out, and so we can come here. You can look right here, and so we look at here, this is the average, but this is going to be skewed by the wealthy people. So averages are not good, okay, in terms of looking at the distribution population. So on average, the assets look pretty good for people over 64 years of age, although that's really not that much money, believe me. We bought a house for 400,000 worth, 2.5 million now. So that's, not the greatest, okay. But then we hone this down, okay, and we start looking at other aspects, okay, of the retirement savings, okay. And so I want to look down here, and this was the liquid amount that people had right here, okay, by age, okay. And so you see there's a lot of people do not have a ton of money. Here you are, $60,000 liquid at 65, 74 years of age, okay. This up here, and this gives you, again, I'm not going to go into this, but we'll get into that later, about how much you should have based on your age and your salary at the time of retirement, okay? Again, this right here is looking at the median, okay, that in terms of everything that's together. And again, that's not a ton of money at this age. When you're going into retirement, you'll burn through that pretty quickly, okay? We can look over here, and again, we can look at, I asked the question, median defined contribution accounts by age 65. We can look at this here, the U.S. Census, okay, pretty reliable. The other guy was a financial investing corporation, but that's okay. And so we look here in the U.S. Census, and they asked them some key questions, okay? All right, so if we look at, if you do have some type of retirement account, it's called a defined contribution account. This is the distribution we see. These are IRAs, 401ks, 503b, okay, 403b, and those are the kind we have at USC because we were a nonprofit, and you see the relative distributions, okay? You see the median value of these accounts is not that significant right now, not that big. The other ones, okay, those were pensions, okay? So this is a defined benefit, okay? That's a pension system, okay? All right, so we scroll down, okay? Retirement account ownership rates, okay, by demographics, okay? And we see that at this right here, only 50% have anything, all right? So the remaining 50% have zero, all right? And that's kind of the shock and awe. And that's the huge problem, okay? We see the cultural, okay, inequities that are out there in terms of our white Americans, okay, versus Hispanics, blacks in terms of these retirement accounts. You see Gen X is not doing so good, okay, millennials right behind. So this is a disaster, okay, that's coming our ways, okay. So I just wanted you to check that out, all right. Back to where we were here. We'll get back in here. Okay, so that means over 50% of the population is totally reliant on just Social Security, okay, and that's a real problem. Okay, so Bob talks about the fulfillment of working at the YMCA and how much he loves it and everything. That's all good. So you have fun with that. And then we look at the other end of the spectrum. All right. So she's 65 years old. She's Kylie Cohen. Okay. She has no assets. Okay. She does not have a 401k, does not have IRAs, and she's completely dependent on Social Security. Okay. So she's luckily was able to get a subsidized housing unit at the Long Beach Senior Arts Colony. But that being said, when she talks about it, her liquidity in terms of paying for life. So 79% of her Social Security check is paid on rent. She's left with $245 a month for everything else, which is mind-boggling. Okay, Veronica Bryant is the same deal. She is in the same boat, and this is Veronica right here. And then what we're going to see is when we get into next week's discussion, okay, we're going to be talking about the drain, the personal drain, in terms of out-of-pocket healthcare expenses, which can be as much, so right now the average Social Security check is because of bumps in 2022 is pretty close to $20,000 a year, but the average out-of-pocket expense is about 5,000 of that towards medical care, and sometimes much greater. It just depends on the type of Medicare program that you have. So this is a big deal. Okay, and so sadly, Veronica Bryant, 73, she had to file for bankruptcy. She's lucky to have this subsidized housing. These guys are buddies, but they're pretty hand to mouth, and this is where we're at about 50% of our country. All right. Here's the other end of the spectrum. The pendulum swings back, okay? So Carrie Eagles, who's 70, okay, she was a teacher, all right, in the public school system. She has a pension, which means she has a guaranteed salary, a good one at that, probably somewhere about $100,000 to $200,000. I mean, $100,000 to about $100 or $120,000 a year for the rest of her life until she dies, okay? And again, that's the difference between a government worker and a private citizen. All righty. So these are just kind of examples and issues. So we see the dilemma here. So I want you to reflect back on this. This is, like I said, this is a great video right here that summarizes what's going on right now in our country. And in this video,
there is a lot at stake in this year's election.
A commercial, of
like
course.
Fair and free elections, like democracy itself.
Ad block is not working.
Vote. It's really important.
All right.
Are you ready for retirement?
One,
Personal
two,
Capital can help you find out.
Boom. All right. So this.
We are hitting a moment where the elder boom.
In this particular
it's the sort of story
video,
that
the author behind Nomadland talks about her documentary and how this is where a lot of older people are ending up because they can't afford rent. So it's pretty amazing. And then we also, you'll hear in this video from experts just about the issues, okay, and how undignified it is to be at this point in your life and to be so dependent, okay. So anyways, all right, guys, so that is where we're at, and so this is important stuff. This is your personal economy. Ask your parents about this. It's time to start finding out what's going on in terms of your parents and grandparents' economics. We're going to go from there, and we're going to then go on next week into how to prepare for retirement and what you guys need to do. Find out if your parents and grandparents have done this, and then this is going to be the hands-on experience of doing that in the next couple of weeks. So it's super cool stuff, guys. Alrighty, so that's where I'm going to end, and we'll see you guys next time.